Our unit on plants. We have been discussing the six kingdoms, and I've been talking about plants will be their own separate unit. So we're going to start off talking about the diversity of plants, the kingdom Plantae, right? So the kingdom is in the domain Eukarya, and it's in the supergroup Archaeoplastida. Okay, and we're taking a look here, and we'll take a closer look in just a minute. So characteristics of the plant kingdom, they're non-modal. Okay, they make their own food, and hence we call them autotrophs as a result, through the process of photosynthesis, which during plant nutrition we will revisit. They produce asexually by vegetative propagation or sexually. They're multicellular eukaryotes. The plant cell contains the outer cell wall and the large central vacuole, and as we know, the chloroplast. Those chloroplasts contain our photosynthetic pigments that we call chlorophyll, and they present the plastids. So plants are responsible for transferring the energy in the from the sun into energy that can be utilized in making oxygen in the process. If you think back to cellular respiration, which we can revisit when we're talking about photosynthesis, about the importance of this incredible energy transformation. They have different organelles for anchorage, reproduction, support, and photosynthesis. So here we're taking a look at a couple of the key important parts of land plants. Okay, so we're looking at algae. They're all kind of in the same supergroup. And then we have land plants that branched off later on in life. And we're going to talk about the importance of this and why it's much more advantageous for plants to be terrestrial. Okay. All right. So the terrestrial advantages. The first one is that there's more light. Water reduces light reaching the plants, so more light is better. There's more carbon dioxide available for photosynthesis. There's more minerals found in the land. And there's fewer predators on land for the plants at the time that this happened, of course. Okay. The disadvantages. There's less support, so water was giving more support than air. Preventing desiccation or drying out. The need for water for metabolic processes was really high, so being in the water was an advantage. And then there's reproductive barriers, bringing gametes together and preventing them from drying out. So land plants evolved new emergent properties to adapt to life on land like all organisms do. So we're taking a look here at the origin of land plants. We should be really familiar with these cladograms, or we can even call them phylogenetic trees. There are 4 different types that we are going to be talking about. All of them are land plants. Some we call vascular, some we call seed plants, okay? And we will discuss. So there's 4 derived traits of terrestrial plants. One of them is they exhibit what we call an alternation of generations, producing an embryo that is for some time dependent on the female gametophyte. The second, plants produce spores coated with sporopollenin to prevent dehydration and waxy cuticles for other plant parts. Multicellular Gametotangia produce eggs and sperm. And they have something called an apical meristem. It's an area found in the tips of shoots and roots and other locations that specialize in the process of mitosis and obviously to help them grow. Okay, so let's talk about the alternation of generations. The parental generations is diploid, which we represent by 2N, with 2 sets of chromosomes called the sporophyte generation, just like in animals. The cells that undergo meiosis are always diploid to start. The sporophyte form what we call sporangia. They'll have cells inside that undergo meiosis to produce haploid spores. If you need a review of meiosis, go ahead and do that. But meiosis are 2 divisions that produce a haploid cell, okay, for reproduction. Spores may be different sizes, megaspores and microspores. You looked at some microspores under the microscope with fungi. They reproduce by spores. Spores become the gametophyte generation, okay? The megaspore produces a gametophyte via mitosis that contains what we call an archegonium that produces an egg. Microspores produce a gametophyte that contain an antheridium, which produces sperm. So again, we're going to get into this a lot more when we get into plant reproduction later on. But this is just showing what this alternation of generations is. Gametophytes and sporophytes generation look nothing alike. Okay, so here let's take a look at the plant. So let's start. We have a gametophyte, right? Which our spore gametophyte, which we consider like our egg or our sperm, right? Egg and sperm. The gamete fusion, which produces a zygote and embryo. Same way in plants. Again, this is something we talk a lot about in plant reproduction. But then we have the sporophyte, which is 2N, which means that it's a diploid cell. The 2 sporangia, the spore mother cell goes through meiosis, and then we have spores, and this is the plant life cycle. Okay. So through evolution, the sporophyte generation has become much more conspicuous than the gametophyte. So let's take a look. This is our gametophyte generation. Something called rhizoids, which you're going to know very well soon. Okay. This is our gymnosperm and angiosperm. You guys are going to know what these all mean. And these are what the sporophytes look like. And so we're producing seeds here and spores. All right. So we have a protected spore here that we're looking at. Here is the sporophyte. Here is the gametophyte part of the plant. This is a section of a spore, okay? Plants produce spores coated with this polymer that prevents dehydration. Okay. The apical meristem is something you're going to be learning about very soon. It's found in the tips and shoots and roots and specialized in the process of mitosis. This is important in helping plants grow. So we're taking a look here at the dominant types of plant groups, okay, which we're going to get into in just a moment. So I'm going to come back to this. Okay, so let's look at the different plant groups first. We're divided into 4 groups based on water conducting tissues, seeds, and flowers. Okay, the reproductive structures and body plans are also considered. We compare the DNA sequences of various features now that we have that ability. So we have flowering plants, we have mosses, and we have ferns, and we have, look at that, cone-bearing plants. So I'd say flowering plants are the most dominant of the plants. Okay. So let's talk about the first one, the bryophytes, the first to evolve on land. They are what we call non-vascular, and we're talking, think about vascular, our vascular system contains blood vessels, right? So these don't have vascular tissue. Mosses we find in swamps. They live in harsh environments. Rhizoid long, thin cells absorb water and minerals and anchor them into the ground. There's also liverworts and hornworts in this group of bryophytes. They use osmosis to draw up water. Okay, water is needed for reproduction and it acts as a natural sponge and forms peat moss. So if you've ever gone barefoot through a forest, which you guys can imagine I like to do often, you can walk on moss and it feels like carpet. It's very beautiful and comfortable. Oh, I'm recording. So here we're taking a look at the mosses, liverworts, and hornworts, right? So this is a moss, this is a liverwort, and this is a hornwort. So the second group that evolved on land are the ferns, about 350 million years ago. They are seedless and they're vascular, which means that they have transport. They have roots, which are underground organs to absorb water and minerals with water-conducting tissue. They have leaves that are photosynthetic. Okay, there are photosynthetic organs. They contain bundles of vascular tissue, which you will become very familiar with. They have veins, which are made up of a xylem and a phloem. Their stems connect the roots and the leaves. Okay, so this is just a quick look into what the vascular tissue looks like, but we're going to be getting to this in great detail soon. Okay, basic structure of a flower. Again, something you'll be getting into. So let's talk about seed plants. So we have gymnosperms. This is our third group. They were the next to evolve. They have seeds on cone surfaces. Okay, conifers, ginkgos, and gnetophytes. Then we have angiosperms, again, pine trees. Angiosperms, which are our flowering plants with seeds in the tissue layer. Okay, flowers or cones transfer the sperm by pollination and protect embryos and seeds. The life cycle alternates between gametophytes and sporophytes. Okay, so those are our 4. We're getting into gymnosperms a little bit more here. These are our cone bearers, our naked seeds. So again, this is still gymnoseeds. Our netophytes, okay. They're large, leathery leaves. They're spread across the ground. So this is what that looks like, okay. And the Cycadophyta, okay. Those are palm-like plants with large cones, okay. Appeared during the Triassic period 225 million years ago. They've been around for a while. They grow in tropical and subtropical places. You've ever been to Florida, you probably see these everywhere, or any islands, okay? The ginkgos, only Ginkgo biloba currently exists. That's the only ginkgo that's left. It's one of the oldest seed plant species that's alive today. It's cultivated in China and planted around temples, but often planted in urban settings in the U.S. due to resistance to air pollution. Conifers, okay, these are our pines, spruces, firs, cedars, sequoias, redwoods. They're long, thin leaves, pine needles, that reduces the surface area, and they have a waxy layer. Most are evergreens. Okay. And we're looking at ginkgo, and we're looking at a conifer. Okay, that's a redwood. And there are angiosperms. Okay, they have an enclosed seed. They came around in the Cretaceous period about 135 million years ago. They dominate Earth's plant life today. Okay, they reproduce with flowers or fruits. Their ovary develops into fruits to protect the seed for dispersal. So when you're eating fruit, you are eating ovaries. The fruit is a thick wall of tissue surrounding the seed, okay, with lots of nutrients for that seed that we take advantage of. So we were looking at seed dispersal by wind and their general flower structure. Again, this is something we spend a significant amount of time on later on in the unit. So monocots, eudicots, types of angiosperms. So cotyledons, one of my favorite words, is a seed, leaves, in the plant embryo. So the first leaves you guys are going to experience when you plant your leaves, the first leaves that you see are what we call cotyledons, and they're already in the plant embryo. Monocots have one seed leaf, parallel veins, multiples of 3 floral parts, vascular bundles, and scattered into fibrous roots. Dicots have 2 seed leaves, branched veins, multiples of 5 or 4 floral parts, and they have vascular bundles in a ring or a taproot. Okay, so this is just showing you the difference. I'm going to have you guys taking a look at a seed embryo very soon so you can tell if it's a monocot or a dicot. Okay, right. Again, another difference. You should be able to tell. Okay, so major groups of flowering plants. Sorry. Amberella, okay. Water lily, star anise. They make a really good tea. An orchid and a California poppy. And this is a comparison of the monocots versus the dicots. Again, something we will be revisiting when we especially talk about flower reproduction. We're going to talk a lot about flowering plants reproduction. All right, here's our summary. This is something important. You might want to take a snapshot of this. Mosses have scales, rhizoids, no vascular system, woody tissue, waxy cuticle. They need water, no seeds, no cones, no fruit. Our ferns have leaves, roots, vascular system, woody tissue, waxy cuticle, water for fertilization, no seeds, cones, or fruits. Conifers, yes to all of these. No for water for fertilization. Yes to seeds, yes to cones, no to fruits. And then we're taking a look at our flowering plants, our angiosperms. Yes to everything, but they don't need water for fertilization, and there are no cones. So this is the difference between the 4 groups of plants that you are expected to know. So I would definitely jot that down. All right. All right, guys.